Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm excited to sit down and do a first impression tutorial and close-ups of the new Huda Beauty palette. This is the newest launch from Huda Beauty. I got this in PR last night. So we're just gonna play around with it, zoom in, try the palette on, see how the shadows blend, and I'm gonna give you all the details in my first impression. So I will link this palette down below or information on when you can get it, as well as all the other makeup that I end up putting on my face. I have really not much on right now. If you're new here, I hope you stick around and subscribe. I do a ton of makeup content, and if you enjoy these first impression videos, please give this video a thumbs up, and I'm too excited. Let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so a little bit about this palette. It is the newest launch from Huda Beauty. It's called the Empowered palette. So this is an 18 pan eyeshadow palette. We do have new textures in here, lots of different textures, even some like eyeliner shadow hybrids. So I'm interested to test those out. This is retailing for $67 and it will be available on October 3rd on the Huda Beauty website, as well as Sephora and other retailers. This has a 24-month shelf life as well, and it is made in Italy. So here is the box the palette comes in, and then on the back I noticed, I think this is Braille. I've never seen a makeup brand do this, or Huda, that I can recall. I believe it is Braille. Interestingly enough, my sister is actually blind. She has macular degeneration. She's had it since she was like 6 years old, and it just progresses as she gets older. So, you know, she can never drive. She has a seeing eye dog and all of that stuff. She doesn't use Braille, but it's just something I noticed. But when I was looking online at her socials, the website, Sephora, I couldn't find any mention of this being something new on her packaging. So if I'm mistaken, and this is something else, possibly, but the only thing I can think of is that it is just an addition to packaging to be more inclusive for people that, you know, have limited vision, stuff like that. So if so, that's a nice touch. I want to commend her for doing that. The packaging is really heavy and nice. You have the eyes on the front with the Empowered on here, but in the PR kit, it says that this is actually a scannable QR code. And if you do scan this, you can be entered to win, I think being mentored by Huda herself, and then $6,000. It's open worldwide to enter. And it's because she started Huda Beauty with $6,000. I think she got a loan. So I feel like this whole vibe is about empowerment and, you know, chasing your dreams. So this is what the outer packaging looks like. And then the palette on the back, it has something about the QR code as well. And the back does have a sticker on it. So that's something to note. So when you open the palette up, I already swatched this, so it looks a little bit messy, but I'm gonna put close-ups and everything on here. You can see that we have 18 shades in here, lots of different textures. There's some interesting, you know, different textures we haven't seen from her before, and she is really good about coming out with tons of different finishes, textures, formulas. So we have a couple in here, this brown and this black, that are like gel eyeliner eyeshadow hybrids. So I'm interested to try that out. I feel like it's going to be similar to the Patrick Ta. And then we have this one right here that almost has that, I want to say like Vaseline feel, or the balm in the middle. You'll see in the close-ups. And then we've got like the marbling, and then we've got the mattes, we've got some gold flake as well. So this is a very shimmer metallic, almost, I guess, like a metals type of palette, just looking at, you know, the shades right here. And when you swatch these, like this one feels almost like a cream, this one feels almost like a cream, and then the one with the actual balm in the middle definitely feels like a cream. So you can see like some of them are more flaky, others are more smooth, but then you have the standard metallic, which is just like a powder metallic right here. So she really does mix it up in here. So I just want to go ahead and zoom in and start playing with this palette. Sometimes I think I just go on too much in the beginning when it's like, let's get to the point, let's zoom in and let's get this on our eyes. Okay, so it's actually been a couple hours since I did my intro talking about the palette. I started doing a look and I just wasn't liking the way that it was going. It was just too intense and too deep. So I wiped it off, went downstairs, hung out for a little bit, and I'm going to restart. I think for this look, I'm just gonna do something that I know that I like. which is a halo eye. I do want to try out the like gel hybrid, which is basically like a cream gel eyeshadow. So you can use these as bases or you can use them as a liner. So I'm gonna go in with the black shade to start, and I'm gonna use it as a base. This is how I use the Patrick Ta as well. And they essentially just help shadows stick to them. I feel like I'm far back. Let me zoom you in. Okay. So this is definitely a cream. And when you apply it, it's not sliding all over, but I don't think this is something that would set down, meaning that I would set this with a powder so that it doesn't crease. So I'm gonna just put it on the inner and outer part of my eye, and I'm gonna keep it pretty low. And once I have the placement, I'm just gonna take a brush, a clean, smaller brush, and just sort of blend the edges. I did not set the lower portion of my concealer on my lid. The first look when I was sort of playing around, I used too much powder, I think, and I just wasn't feeling it. So I'm just sort of blending the edges. And then to set down this cream, I'm gonna go in with the deepest shade. This is called Confident. And I'm just gonna use a fluffy brush. And I want to just sort of set this down because I do think that the bases would probably crease without like putting an eyeshadow on top. And then I'm gonna go ahead with a smaller blending brush and just sort of buff around the edges. And then I'm just gonna take a clean brush and start really softening the edges here. So it's almost like that base goes, I would say, more like gray when you blend it out. So I could see it being like a good base for like a smoky wing, which I think that's how Huda used it when I watched her video. And then I'm just going back in with that deep matte because we are gonna lose a little bit of the depth when we blend. Okay, so I'm gonna take the shade Big Dreams and I'm gonna take just a little bit of it. This is one of the cooler tones in the palette. And I just wanna use this just to blend a little bit, but I don't want it to be too intense. So for the center of the lid, for some reason, I'm not really feeling the gold shades. I just feel like that's what a lot of people will use. I want to start off with this shade, which is more of the like marbled metallic. And I want to just use this on each side, sort of like a sandwich to a halo. So I'm just applying it pretty haphazardly here because I'm gonna blend around it, but I just wanna put that down first. And I'm gonna make sure to blend the edges here. And then of course, just go back in with your mattes and just sort of make sure that they're seamless. Okay, and for the very center of the lid, I'm gonna use the shade that has that balm in it. So when you touch it, it definitely feels like a cream. So it's almost like a metallic shadow with a balm in the center. So I'm interested to see how this is going to apply. So I'm gonna use my finger and I just wanna sort of tap on. Okay, so it definitely feels like a balm. Okay, there we go. So I feel like you have to be a little bit more strategic when you're, you know, getting it out of the pan to try to hit the sides a little bit more than just rubbing in the center. And then once I have that, I'm just gonna go around the edges of the entire shadow to just make sure everything looks blown out. And then to add just a smidge of warmth, I wanna take this orangey tone up here very lightly and just blend around. And then because we lost some of it, I'm gonna go back into that marble shade. I really love this one. It's really pretty, like a shift from like orange to purple. All right, so I think I'm gonna leave the top of the eyes there. I'm gonna do a winged liner, lashes, finish the rest of my makeup, and then we can move on to finishing the lower lash line and then kind of go over my first impression and initial thoughts. All right, so I did the rest of my makeup off camera and I wanna finish off the lower lash line. So I'm gonna start off with an eyeliner. I'm gonna use the Persona Cosmetics. This is a new eyeliner in the shade Brown. So what I'm gonna do is put this in the waterline, and I'm gonna go a little bit underneath, like so. It doesn't have to be perfect. Hopefully this smudges, and I'm gonna use a tiny detail brush to smudge under my lash line. So this is gonna be like a base for the eyeshadow, and the reason that I do this is because I have blonde eyelashes, so if I don't smudge, you can see my lash line like right there, so I like to go over it. So it feels like this liner dries pretty quickly, so you probably want to move quick. All right, the liner got on my contacts a little bit, and it feels like it's not gonna move, so hopefully it will smudge. So I'm gonna go in next with Confident, which is that really deep matte shade, and I'm just sort of gonna go in stamping motions over top of the liner. That liner looks almost black to me, even though it was brown. So I'm going over it and then just smoking down a little bit. Okay, so underneath that, I'm gonna take this shade right here, and I'm just going to use this to further smoke underneath. You can mix in a little bit of the deep shade if you need to. Okay, and then I think to finish this off, I do want to go in to the shade right here. This actually is one of my favorite shades I used today, and I want to wet a little brush and put this in the center of my lower lash line. I just love the shift that it gives. So I just want to put like a pop of it right in the center of my lower lash line. It's not like the most metallic in the palette, but I like the color. Okay guys, so this is my finished makeup look using the new Empowered palette from Huda Beauty. I do love how it turned out, and I have some thoughts that I want to talk about and give you kind of my first impression. So first of all, I love the packaging. I really like this size of a palette because it's thin. I can store it easily. There's no, weird shapes or anything funky. You do also get a mirror, and then I like that there's 18 pans. This is sort of my sweet spot. This and the Natasha Denona middies. I kind of like maybe a little bit more than a 9 pan, but I don't really like any more like the huge, let's say, Be Perfect Cosmetics or the Morphe palettes. So I like something this size. I also like the different textures in here. Now, of course, I wasn't able to use them all. That is part of the reason that I had to scrap my first look. It's because I try to push myself to use way too many textures and shimmers and colors, and it's really just not realistic. So I decided to just do something that I actually would wear, or something that I actually would, apply to go out, because sometimes when you push yourself to try too much, it just ends up being just too many different shades trying to blend together. I mean, you have the marbling, you have the cream sort of gel hybrids, you have the gold flaking ones, then the one with a little bit of a balm in it. So there's a lot to play with in here, which I find exciting, but sometimes it's not as useful or something that I would reach for every day. So for instance, this shade right here that has that sort of like balm in the middle, I have it on my lids, and I noticed already that I do have a little bit of creasing on my lid. So that's something that, yes, it can look pretty for a photo, or it's something that looks a little bit different in the marketing photos, but you have to know that sometimes things that are a little bit special or different can be a little bit harder to work with. It's not something that I feel like is, crazy and I need to fix it right now, but it is just something I noticed. And when I was using this shade, I tried to stay on the outer edges and get less of the like Vaseline type of balm and more of the actual pigment to make it, stand out a little bit more. So what I'm trying to say is, while I applaud Huda for coming up with different textures and finishes, I think it's really cool. Sometimes some of those can be a dud or something that you may not use a lot. Another new formula Huda has never released before is these gel hybrid eyeshadows. So when she demoed this, she used this as sort of like a smoky wing liner. For me, it's either going to be that set with a powder or a base. It's not something that I probably would reach for as much as some people may, just because if I have to set it with a powder, I would probably just use a powder to smoke out. But for me, it definitely has to be set with a powder because they don't set down like, let's say, an eyeliner would. So they're going to crease you know, throughout the day as you blink, especially if you have hooded eyes. So I think it's a nice addition. I would have liked to see maybe different colors because this dark brown really is very similar to the black. And then in terms of the mattes, I would have liked to see a little bit more cool in here, because I feel like these three shades in particular are just very similar, and I was gravitating towards these shades down here. I don't know what it is, but lately I'm really loving cool tones, and not even necessarily like an icy silver, but just a little bit more on the cool side rather than these sort of orangey warm shades that we see a lot. Overall, I think this is a great quality palette. I get along with the Huda formula, so it doesn't surprise me. I do think this is a good option for those of you that really love a shimmery metallic, almost foiled lid, because there's so many different textures and metallic shades in here. If you don't really use metallics or shimmers on the lid, you may not want to pick this up solely because there's so many shades in here that really are foiled. So I'll have to keep trying this out and kind of see what other looks I can come up with. I do think it's quite versatile because you can stay in the more cool tones like I did with a little bit of that purple hue, or you can go for the gold and the more orangey tones. So I'm interested to keep trying it out and play with the different textures. But you know, I just didn't want to do too much at once, because sometimes when I push myself to do too much at once, I end up wiping it off and having to redo it like I did today, and coming up with something that's actually cohesive and I feel looks put together on me personally. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think about how they swatched, the palette, the price, how it applied? I always love chatting in my comments. I will leave all the information in my description box, as well as link all the makeup that I'm wearing right now. I appreciate you guys watching my videos, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I hope you stick around and subscribe. I do a ton of new makeup content. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.